Marion, and happy to be here with, I must say, the most female audience I have ever had here in Brussels. So what are we going to talk about this morning? Indeed, the female market, and Helene already introduced us to it. $22 trillion in spending that is controlled and in the hands by women. Now, that women control the spending is nothing new. In fact, marketeers have forever known that if we look at the household expenses, it is the mother of the house that we have to look at. And that is nothing new. But that's a very traditional and classic way of looking at it, and things have definitely changed from that. That 22 trillion is not just the money that is spent on the detergent, and it's not just the money that is spent on the apples for the kids and the cookies. It is also the money that is spent on DIY projects. It's also the money that is spent on the car. It's also the money that is spent in choosing the insurance and investments that a family will make. And so in ever more industries, it becomes ever more important to look at the customer, and that customer very often being female. But that also begs with it the question, well, what does it mean to look at the customer? When I talk to organizations today, I hear them talking about a set of key priorities that they have and that are very high on the agenda. And one of the first priorities that I hear CEOs and executive teams constantly talk about is customer centricity. Whether we call it customer centricity, customer delight, customer whatever, you may have your own lingo for it, but it stands for companies increasingly, instead of thinking inside out, need to think outside in, from the customer's point of view. And the second key priority that I constantly hear talking about is innovation. If we want to stand out from the competition, we have to innovate. Two buzzwords, definitely, customer centricity and innovation, two buzzwords of the day. And companies have the challenge to make them more than buzzwords, more than topics that we pay lip service to, but subjects that we are really able to implement such that we get the performance out of it. And when we talk about these two priorities of thinking outside in from the customer's point of view, customer centricity, and being innovative, that in and of itself is a challenge, because they often seem to be on different sides of the spectrum. They often seem to be contradictory to one another. Because how can we listen to the customer and at the same time be innovative? How do we combine that? Because then we hear phrases like, but customers do not know what they want. So we can't ask them what they want. And if we would ask them what they want, they would have said a faster horse. That's the quote from Henry Ford, who said, well, if I would have asked customers what they wanted, I never would have invented the car. It would have been a faster horse. Legend has it that this quote stood on Steve Jobs' desk. I don't know if that is true or an urban myth, but definitely you often then also hear people say, but Steve Jobs didn't listen to customers. So if you want to be innovative, you don't need to do that. You need to set your own path and set your own vision. I'm here to show you that companies really have to listen to customers, and that is not contradictory to be innovative, and that if we look at this 22 trillion in spending, and if we want to capture that, we will need to think not just about how to create value for that female consumer, but actually also create value together with that female consumer. Because the biggest R&D budget in the world, you know what company that belongs to? What company would have the biggest R&D budget in the world? L'Oreal, maybe? Yeah. P&G? Yeah. Or we think something pharmaceutical. Well, the biggest R&D budget in the world is not owned by a company. It is not owned by a company. The biggest R&D budget in the world is owned by the consumer. If we look at how innovative consumers are themselves, 6% of consumers actually adapt products to their needs and innovate themselves because they can't find on the market what is satisfying to them. And if we look at the whole total budget that represents, that is the biggest R&D budget, and it is in the hands of your consumer, of your customer. This is where the innovation, in fact, is already happening. If we only open our eyes to see it and to capture it and to do something with it. Because if we would open our eyes, we would actually see people like this woman here. Her name is Julie Clark. And when she got children, she didn't find what she was looking for in terms of kids' entertainment, because she wanted to instill her love of the arts already from a young age with her kids. And all of the kids' DVDs and cartoons were, she thought they were, just silly. And so she said, I'm not finding what I'm looking for here, so I'm going to start doing that myself. And she started a company, it's called Baby Einstein. I don't know if you've heard about it. I know when I got kids, I bought quite a few of those Baby Einstein DVDs, thinking, you never know that it works, that it helps. It definitely will not hurt. Yeah? $350 million later, Julie made that enterprise, Baby Einstein. It's now been sold for more than $350 million to Disney. Disney that did not see the opportunities that were there if they would have listened better to what customers really were looking for. And what Julie Clark also shows is that if we are not listening, our customers become our competitors. You know that Julie is not an exception. In fact, 84% of the innovations in the category of children and baby gear are in fact invented by consumers themselves. So if we say that consumers are not innovative and don't know what they want, there's plenty of numbers that contradict us in that. And by the way, this is not just baby stuff, because I hear you thinking, yeah, women are innovative when it's baby stuff. No. When we look at financial services, more than 50% of new financial services that are brought on the market were in fact already invented by consumers. More than 70% of innovations in sporting gears market, in fact, were already invented by consumers. There's quite a bit of numbers that illustrate that this idea that customers don't know what they want or are not innovative, that is in fact an urban myth, and that we should get rid of that. And I think this is the backdrop that shows us that if we want to be customer-centric and bring innovation to the market, we need to do it jointly with our customer. We need to do it together. And we need to find business models where we embrace those opportunities that are in fact out there. Think of a platform like Etsy, where today more than $1 billion of goods a year are being sold. And Etsy basically created a business model that is based on capturing that creativity and that innovation that is coming from consumers themselves. Because I don't know if you ever bought something on Etsy, because you can go on the platform if you want. It's on Etsy that in fact every single consumer can start a micro business selling the things that they made themselves. And they created a business model that is creating opportunities on that. Pablo Picasso once said, "Great artists steal." And so that innovation that is present there in the consumer market, we need to tap into. into it. Because if we don't tap into it, then consumers will do it for themselves. Here's another example of a consumer doing it for herself. This is the Happy Hippo. And the Happy Hippo was invented by a lady called Barbara Flamand. And when her kid got diabetes, her daughter had to train and to learn how to inject herself with insulin. And so they started practicing on a teddy bear. And then Barbara said, well, there must be better ways to do this. And she put connections in the teddy bear, such that if her daughter would do the injection right, there would be a green light and otherwise a red light. And she thought, well, this actually is the way that it's supposed to be done. She sought sponsorship, and buyers started sponsoring her and working with her together to perfect this initial idea that she had. And since then, kids with diabetes get the happy Hippo. This is what it means to create value together with our consumer, and to acknowledge and to recognize that the innovation, in fact, is right there under our noses if we just open our eyes to see it. Now, what I want to talk to you about is 5 different practices that companies can deploy to, in fact, look at those opportunities that are out there if we listen to our consumers. And if we make our customers more than just passive observers of our business, but if we embrace the ideas that they have, and if we embrace the insights that we can get from connecting deeper and more closely with our consumers. And that in fact means that we have to make customers more than passive observers, because this is how we can see the opportunities that are there. Of course, this brings with it the hypothesis that customers want to be more than passive observers of what companies are bringing to the market. And do we want that? Do we want to be actively involved? Well, yes, customers don't want to be silenced. They want their voice to be heard. They want to have impact on organizations. And they want them not to just invent things for them, but they want to do things together. Let me tell you about a scientific experiment that looked at how consumers evaluate service experiences. And the experience compared 2 different scenarios. Scenario number 1, you arrive at the airport. You look at the board to look up your flight, and you see the much dreaded word, canceled. The word you really don't want to see. You go to the counter of your airline and you ask the agent at the counter, see, my flight is canceled, what can you do for me? And the agent says, don't worry, go have a seat over there, I'll look up what I can do for you. And 5 minutes later, the agent calls you back and he says, there's another flight in half an hour, here's your boarding pass, off you go. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2, you arrive at the airport. You look at your flight on the board, you see the dreaded word canceled. You go to the counter, and the agent says, well, let's go see what we can do for you. And he turns the screen so that both of you together can look at what the options are and see that indeed there is a flight in half an hour, and you're off with your boarding pass. 2 scenarios. 2 scenarios in which in both scenarios, you were not happy, your flight was canceled. Half an hour later, you're on another flight. The result is exactly the same. The result of the whole process is exactly the same. However, there is one significant difference between the 2 scenarios, and that is how you evaluate it afterwards. How high your customer satisfaction is in fact significantly different, even though the outcome is exactly the same. So it's not about what we do for our customers, it's about how we do it. And if we indeed give them an active voice. Because if we have made a joint decision and looked at the screen together, consumers are in fact happier afterwards. So this sort of experiments, and there's quite a bit of other research done on this, shows that engagement and involvement of customers, even though the outcome is the same, actually leads to a better result. So let's not be afraid to make our customers more than passive observers of what we do, just being on the receiving end of the products and services that we put on the market. But let's look at embracing jointly doing that with them as a great opportunity. This is, for example, what Amazon is doing with their new original series that they put on their Netflix competitor-like offering. And they have developed a few series of which they put the pilot on Amazon. And then they basically ask consumers, just have a look at the pilots and tell us which one of these series that you want us to actually develop. Here's 5 options that you can choose from, and maybe you want that one, or maybe you want that one with Mina Survari. We're just going to listen to you. You vote, and this is a product that we're going to put in production. This is making your customer more than a passive observer. So let's go back to those 5 practices that any organization can deploy to look at how can we not belittle our consumer, but how can we recognize the powerful force that they can be towards our organizations and towards our success in the market. Follow the user and all else will follow. That basically is the mantra that is guiding us there. By the way, this is the #1 value at Google. What we need to do is install 3 feedback loops. The inner one is where we develop a constant dialogue with consumers, constantly involving them in what we do. And the second one is where we make sure that that dialogue, in fact, that we integrate that in the things that we put out there in the market. That is the innovation loop. That's making sure that the insights that we gain, that we also put them in practice. And the third loop, that is the outcome of this, is a culture of an organization that is obsessively listening to its customers and embracing the opportunities that you can find there if you do that. So how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, it is indeed about investing in that constant feedback of customers. That's the simplest process to implement. Open up the channels of communication and dialogue with your customers. Don't hide your telephone number there on the 35th page of your website and say, please don't call us because we're too busy. But open up the dialogue with customers. That's the first practice. Second practice, immerse yourself into your customer. Immerse yourself in understanding that customer really in depth. Because if we want to do things that are really effective on the market, we're not going to get there with a superficial understanding of our customer. Tapping into that female economy is more than just pinkifying things, That's not enough to just make everything pink. We need to go further and really immerse ourselves in our customer. And here is an example of a company that really understood their customer and how you see it implemented in all of the detail of the service that they have developed. It's a company called Curves, and it's by origin an American company started in Texas in 1992, 2 or 3, with one location. And what is Curves? It's a gym. So you're thinking, well, what's new about a gym? There are 1 million different gyms around the world. Do we really need another chain of gyms? Well, apparently, we did really need another chain of gyms because for 20 years, this has been the fastest growing franchise in the United States and abroad as well. Now, what's special then about Curves that made it such a fast growing organization? Well, it's not just a gym. It's a gym for women. Or at least that's how people from the outside don't look at it. Because it's not really a gym for women. It's a gym for women who don't go to the gym. Which I must say is a much bigger market opportunity than the women that do go to the gym. So that's definitely clever from a business perspective, but obviously, if you want to tap into that market being a gym, you will have to really understand why is it that women are not going to the gym. And we have to overcome those barriers. So ladies, why is it that we are not going to the gym? Or if the gentlemen have any insight in this, that would be interesting to listen to their perspective about anybody. No. Anybody dares to speak. You don't have time. Yeah. We're just plain damn busy. Yeah. We're just too busy. We've got, we're juggling multiple plates constantly. We've got work and we've got kids and we've got family and we've got our friends and we've got so much to do constantly. We just don't have the time. Whether that's a valid excuse or just, what we tell ourselves, we just leave that aside. But what did Curves do? They developed a 30-minute routine. So in 30 minutes, you are in and out, really understanding that women are under time pressure. They have searched for locations based on the work-home routes so that women can pop in very quickly on their way to work or back home. Always with parking in front, because you don't want to go searching for a parking spot, and also you don't want to be walking for the issue of safety. What else prevents women from going to the gym? Just shout something. Taking care of the kids, what will happen with the kids, yeah? And so what many gyms do as a solution is indeed have some childcare there. But most of us don't feel comfortable leaving our kids with some stranger that we absolutely do not know. And by the way, our kids usually are not that happy as well, being left by strangers. And then you're exercising, feeling guilty. You hear a kid crying. You're jumping off the treadmill because it might be mine. So not the best. Not the best experience. And so what Curves did is they solved that by going for just a short time frame. 30 minutes in and out, on your way to work or on your way back home. Any other insights? Why are we not going to the gym?
We don't have the budget to cost.
The cost, the budget, it costs money. So Curves is quite affordable. It is not expensive. Other insights that they got was, one of the things that women hate are the men in the gym. let's just admit it, They look at you and you're, not really most flattering outfit. They sweat and they stink, in this female audience I feel comfortable saying this. I would say it in a male audience as well. No. What women, for example, really hate is if you go onto a weight machine and a man has been there before you, then there's like 50 kilo on there. You first have to lug it all off, and then, until you can do with your 5 kilo what you need to do. We just detest that. And so Kerr said, an all-female environment. Now specifically, if we look at why women that don't go to the gym, why they're not going, the irony is one of the main barriers is because we are not fit. Because we're not in shape.
We hate people who stare at us.
Yes.
Other women and especially men.
Yeah, you hate the eyes of the women, but men, but also of the women, in fact. Women, we're our worst, critics. Yeah, let's face that. Yeah? And so you think I'm gonna go to the gym, and everybody there, will be ultra slim and with their washboard abs, and I'll be the only flabby one there. And so obviously that's a vicious circle, because as long as you're not fit, you're not going, but you have to go to get fit. And so what did Curves do? They are communicating in their advertising campaigns. They don't use the Jane Fonda types. They don't use the aspirational imaging, which gyms in fact always use. They use the image of this is what you're going to become. You know, sometimes even with the before and the after. Curves uses real women to show you will be here in an environment with women just like you. What else do we learn? If we ask women, describe your ideal gym experience. Women, in fact, will describe something which is a social experience, not an individual one, a social one, where you go together with your girlfriends, but obviously that never happens because your girlfriends also don't have time, you know, and you never get that done. But it is a social experience. Now look at how most gyms are being set up. The treadmills lined up side by side, everybody watching their own screen, pretending like there's nobody else there. It's the weirdest thing. It's a solitary experience that gyms are being designed for, not a social experience. And here you see it already in the image, that 30-minute routine at Curves, it happens in a circle. So this now becomes a joint experience instead of an individual and solitary experience. I could go on, you know, telling you all about all of these little details, things like no mirrors in the room because we don't even want to look at ourselves. Yeah? But what I want to illustrate with you is if we're talking about immersive customer understanding, we're not talking about one little insight and that says, how do you get to the female audience? Well, you just put everything in a pink box and case is solved. No. It goes much deeper than that. And we need to look at every little thing that we do, all of the details, and ask ourselves from a consumer perspective, is this the right thing to do? That's what it means to immerse yourself in a customer. And immersing yourself into the customer also means asking yourselves, what is it that customers want to achieve through our products and services? For example, if you look at the photography business, then many people say photography has changed tremendously in the last 20 years. And I say, yeah, that's absolutely right. It has changed tremendously. If you look at it from a technology and a product perspective. But if you look at it from a consumer perspective, photography has not changed at all, one bit. Because the reason why people take pictures has always been the same, to capture memories and to create experiences. So look at your products and services from a customer's point of view. Never has a product been more honest about what it is than this one, Hope in a Jar. It actually exists. Understand what customers really want to realize through your products and services. Like Nathalie Massenet from Net-a-Porter. Little tidbit, every package that you get from Net-a-Porter comes with a ribbon wrapped around it. Why? Because the psychology behind this is you just didn't order yourself a pair of shoes. The ribbon says, I deserve it. It's a gift to myself. Look at all of the details of what you do through the eyes of your customer and what that entails and how big the differences are in all of the details between men and women. That's what Gloria is going to talk to you about. So I'm looking forward to